So I'm back with my good buddy UJ, and the funny thing about this is that UJ is actually in my house right now, and I'm in my office right outside of my house.
Yep, John's kicked out.
Because we planned on recording this in person and then couldn't quite get the tech going. So we're like, what would you say, 20 feet away from one another right now? Which is awkward and hilarious.
Yeah.
UJ, I have a memory of you that I want to share, which is particularly funny because your new wife is sitting right beside you at the moment. So this is obviously a memory from like
I think I know what you're talking about.
But we were sitting on my couch at a place that I used to have.
Oh man.
And you were with Allison, who at that point was my girlfriend, now my wife. And you were showing her what you were doing on Tinder and she photoshopped like on your Tinder profile a little header thing that said Tinder match of the week above your photo.
Oh yeah.
Why did that work so well? You knew I was going to ask this, didn't you?
First of all, dude, I was thinking about this like yesterday. I was really thinking about it yesterday because I knew I was going to see you guys today, and we've known each other a while, and so we've had some stories. So, well, I think it worked really well because at the time, I don't know how these apps work now because I've been in a relationship for years, but at the time, when people are on Tinder, they're swiping and they've got go into a bit of a trance, very similar to when they're scrolling. And so as a single guy at the time, I realized I needed something to break the women out of their trance and have them go, oh, what's this interesting situation?
Just something, a pattern interrupt, something.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Pattern interrupt, but also pattern interrupts that communicated value. Like I could have put up like a completely red image and that would interrupt them, but it wouldn't have delivered any value. It had to pop out in some way that made me look different. And so they just launched a Tinder match of the day, week, something like that. And I think we copied that. We just took what that looked like, and Allison was skilled at Photoshop in ways that I wasn't.
Sure.
And that did well. Did well.
I mean, it's just funny, but also it's such a perfect example to me of like something I've always admired about you, which is just working backwards from the problem. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here, and what are the potential barriers to that happening? Like, all right, I'm on this app. I'm trying to meet somebody. I'm trying to get a date. What are the barriers to this happening? Well, I can try to compete where everybody else competes on and stress about the quality of the photos or how the photos are organized or the bio. And like you did that, like that was optimized too. But how can you stand out in a way that's different versus trying to compete in like a really noisy place? I think about that a lot in terms of the parallels to social media. Like, it's noisy.
Yeah.
How do you stand out? It's fascinating, man.
Be the match of the week.
Be the match of the week. But like, you could recreate something like that if you just think like, okay, what's a pattern interrupt? Mm-hmm. What's a way to do this? Okay, now another story.
Okay. You prep for this. I like it.
You had just moved into your new office or your new house, and you were showing me around. Mm-hmm. And the third floor of the house was your office. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. And it's such a wonderful space. But one of the things that you did to figure out how to like furnish your perfect space was you asked people close to you. You can tell me if I'm wrong. You asked people close to you what positions they find you in when you seem to be most in the zone. Is that right?
Actually, that's so I'll refine that a little bit. I actually interviewed my parents because they're the ones who've seen me read the most. And I asked them, in what position have you seen me read the most? Because I was optimizing the place, that specific spot for reading.
Right.
And I was actually surprised by their answer, which was, I read lying down. And so here I was thinking about getting a couch and getting a day bed, and they were like, no, you read a lot lying down on the bed or even on the couch. And so eventually I ended up getting like a lounge, like a floor seating, basically,
Yeah.
where it was just like a large area where I could just lie down and have pillows and play around like a kid and have books all around me. And it was
But you
design
didn't even
thinking,
know that
essentially.
about yourself. Isn't that
No,
crazy?
that's
How many
bananas.
hours have you spent reading?
Like thousands, like probably over 5,000, like conservatively. I read
Yeah.
like a ton.
And yet you were still going to get like a regular static couch.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we aren't that aware. Even if we're aware, a lot of the time we are not that aware. And it doesn't cost anything to ask people around us for feedback or perspective. Well, it does cost pride.
Okay.
It does cost ego. So there is a cost, but if you can manage your way out of the cost, it can be very, very profitable.
I mean, in this case, it was just a matter of asking your parents how they
Exactly.
see you do some. But I think about that in terms of coaching, in terms of getting outside help. Like, hey, what do you see me doing? What do you like the process? What was the book that I read? I think it was Unique Ability, like the first like Dan Kennedy book.
Mm-hmm.
Not Dan Kennedy.
Sullivan.
Oh, what's his name? Dan Sullivan book. And the process of figuring out your unique ability stemmed from asking, I think it was 5 people, like colleagues, friends, family members, hey, what am I uniquely great at? And I did that, and I was really surprised at the answers. Have you ever done a process like that?
I'm
What are
pretty
you
sure you
uniquely great
filled
at?
out. I think you actually filled out one of my
Did I
surveys, if you
fill
don't
out one
remember.
of yours? What did I
This
say
was like
about you?
years ago.
Shit, I wish I had that person. That would have
I
made my
wish I
life
did
easier.
too.
Yeah.
I think one of the things is like first principle thinking. I can solve a problem right to the root cause
Yes.
and
Explain
figure
what
out.
first principle thinking is, because it's an important enough subject that we take a few minutes on it.
Absolutely. So first principle thinking is, well, first of all, I'm happy to share an article written by Tim Urban that will do a much better job
Amazing.
than I will at explaining this, but it will take 20 minutes to read. So
No, the
we can
article
share
is
that
going
in
to
the
take
show
you
notes.
5 hours to read. You kidding? I've
That's
read it.
fair. That's fair. It's the Cook and the Chef. That's the one.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So first principle thinking, without taking 5 hours. First principles thinking is being able to take a problem and reduce it to the fundamental basic elements that comprise it,
Right.
and then learn how to solve it in an elegant way. For example, in a chemistry situation, and a compound is made up of several elements. And if you can distill the compound to the various elements, you understand what comprises the thing. And then you can work with it in whatever way. But this obviously isn't limited to chemistry. It's limited to any problem in life. And
Yeah.
so when there's a real challenge, and this is kind of what I do. You've known this about me. We've talked a lot about it, but now we get a chance to share it with people.
Yeah.
Is I journal, I think, and journaling is basically like auditing your own code. That's the way I think about it. A lot of people think about it a bit more fluffily. You're journaling your thoughts. It's a diary, feelings, etc. And feeling, all that is helpful and useful. But at the end of the day, when you're solving a problem, you're a carbon-based computer, basically.
Sure.
The mind is, at least. And so when you're solving a problem and you write down the way you're solving it, very similar to a math problem, right? You write down the steps. This happens, and this happens, this happens. There is a way to solve it elegantly.
Mm-hmm.
And when you write your thought thinking down, you recognize the things you write about, and you realize, oh wait, that's not true at all. So you decode, you debug your thinking in real time, but you can't do that without writing it down.
Interesting.
And so that's kind of how I solve problems. Is I solve them, and then I have a sense for understanding what's fundamental here, what's bullshit, and what's extraneous.
It's this is so. You and I have never talked about this aspect of it. This is so interesting to me because in some ways, this process is pretty commonly used. Like I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
about customer experience mapping, for example,
Yep.
of
Or
which
design
I've done a
thinking.
tremendous amount of work. Design thinking, of which I've done a
Yep.
tremendous amount of work in workshops and things like that about. Where, I mean, some variation of you basically map the entire process of your customer experience from before they buy to when they buy uh, to how they experience your product to ideally how they repeat buy and refer others, all the way through every touch point. And I like to do customer experience emotion mapping, so adding another element to what they're thinking
Mm-hmm.
at that point.
I love that.
And you do it with stickies basically on the wall, and you have different color stickies for different things. Some variation of that, right? And the idea is when you see all of this in front of you on the wall, you can then look at every single aspect of it and say, okay, what's somebody feeling here? Oh, they're probably
Mm-hmm.
anxious, right? I have some evidence to show me that they're anxious. I'm not really meeting them where they're at in terms of that anxiety for one little piece of it. And systematically, step by step by step, you can improve the experience at each stage of the game. That's relatively common for things like customer experience, but it's not common with what you're talking about. with
No,
with
well,
with journaling, with figuring out why we do what we do in order to improve it.
yes. The first principles to me is a fundamental way of looking at things that reduce things to the most basic functional units that then you can apply to. Basically, if you look at design thinking, all these frameworks, design thinking, customer journey mapping, jobs to be done, they're very powerful frameworks that are based in first principles.
Right.
And so once you understand first principle thinking and you apply it to a bunch of problems, you can apply it to a brand new thing. Like I use it for designing my workshop space, right?
Yep.
So what are we looking to accomplish? And I just work backwards step by step. And this again can seem a very simple approach, but it's really effective, and it doesn't really look sexy, to be honest. Like it doesn't. The process is not very like blow your mind. The
Right.
results tend to be pretty awesome.
Well, but think about
But
how
the
much you
process
use
of
that office and how often you sit and how much
exactly.
you're there. And we talk about this in the health and fitness industries a lot about sleep, about how much, what percentage of your time you spend sleeping and how little of time you spend optimizing the quality and the experience of your sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and just how goddamn important that is. I think it's the same for your desk and for your office space, but you can't, as you
Mm-hmm.
demonstrated, you can't really do that yourself. It takes other people almost watching you how to work. What it, I called it your pacing path, but you basically created like a little
Yeah.
route around your place to pace. How did that come about? Like, what is that, first of all, and how did that one come about?
So that came about because, again, my now wife Justine, um, I started asking myself, like, what am I doing when I'm solving problems? Like,
Yeah.
how do I look like on the outside to a fly on the wall when I'm solving problems? And it's usually I'm journaling, I'm reading, I'm taking a walk, or I'm pacing. I'm pacing round and round.
Right.
And when you told me, I'm like, oh yeah, I do that. I do that. And so, we live in Canada, and it's cold out here, and so I can't always take a walk.
Right.
So around the space, I just had a walkway that
And it's
that
not
was
big.
was
Like, I
for
want to be
pacing
clear.
purposes.
Like you're going in circles.
No,
Like it ain't big.
yeah, I am. I am. But I
But
gotta
this,
say that pathway has helped me solve a lot of problems.
yeah. I mean, just this idea of optimizing from first principles how you work. I mean, I think first principles thinking is maybe probably the most important, call it thinking framework, um,
Hmm.
that exists. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to follow first principles all the time, but I think it's very important to understand it. And I think about this in terms of my own life engineering, and I followed this for my software platform. Like, if no software platforms out there existed in my space, what would it look like? Knowing now know what I know after advising these platforms for like 8 years, like knowing now what I know, it's like, okay, well, a whole bunch of assumptions can actually be thrown out the window because they
Hmm.
do more harm than good. But if you didn't know that,
Well, I
i.e.,
think
most of the other
it's
people in
really
my space, in
beautiful
any
what you.
space, they just copy.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful what you did because, and this is a good way of thinking about it. Is first principle thinking happens by asking the questions, and that was a great question you asked. Wait, like what do we actually really need here?
Yeah.
That needs to be done, and what's for the fluff? What's the meat?
What's the one thing that we got to knock out of the park?
Exactly. You know, and that helps you really focus, and it's a powerful way of getting results. And another way of applying the benefits of first principle thinking is just understand what mental models are
Mm,
already use it. And so we've mentioned a bunch on the call. Honestly, anyone on the call, if you take nothing away from this, take these three models will fundamentally change how you do business. Here we go.
okay, what
Jobs
are
to be
they?
done.
Yeah.
Jobs to be done.
We're gonna
Um,
go through all of them one by one, but let's list them first. Jobs to be done.
the customer journey mapping,
Ah, okay.
and what's the other one? Design thinking.
Design thinking.
Right?
Deeply
We've already
mentioned.
mentioned this, but you can go as long as you want,
Talk to me about jobs to
as
be
deep
done,
as you want.
because jobs to be done is something that we followed a lot. We had a product innovation team that taught jobs to be done out of Harvard University, and we worked with them for a year to do prototyping design. We did very extensive jobs to be done research. It is a hard protocol to follow to do right. But
Oh yeah.
I don't think that you really need to follow all of it. Oh yeah, like we did 2 week research sprints. We built prototypes. We built pamphlet studies. We did
Mhm.
anonymous research. We did crazy stuff, man. Testing assumptions. But I don't think you need to do all of that. It's very expensive, very time consuming.
No.
But just to understand the basic mental model of jobs to be done is kind of like an 80-20. So talk to me about what that is.
Mhm. So jobs to be done is best used, in my opinion, and I'm welcome to kind of hear your thoughts about it. It's best used
Mm-hmm.
when you already have a product that's working.
Yeah.
Then you have product market fit. When you're starting a new product, it's a slightly different process that you want to use because you don't need to go as intensely into this. But let's say you have something that's working, you already have product market fit, you're looking to modify it, bring out new stuff. You want to understand who this is really affecting and how that process is happening. You want to employ this. And the name comes from the idea that the job your product is doing. It's
Yeah.
doing a job for someone. That's why they're buying it. And it's just like my example of I was oblivious about the way that I read and solve problems. A lot of the time as business owners, we're oblivious about what it is that we're truly deeply doing
Right.
for our customers and clients. We're oblivious. We just don't know. And when we know that, when we understand that, we can leverage it so deeply
Yeah.
that the way I came to know about this is actually through our mutual friends, JB and Phil,
Mm-hmm.
um, who founders of Precision Nutrition.
Yeah.
And I
John's in the
remember,
summit. John's in the summit.
great,
We did a good call a couple days ago.
awesome. It's actually been a while since I've talked to him. It's a good reminder.
He's
So
doing good.
great. That's good to know. Um, I remember Phil saying jobs to be done was one of the most important things they did
Yeah.
at PN. And so that really caught my attention. And it's because they didn't understand that they were already fairly sizable at that point. But
Mm-hmm.
it's the leverage they got from truly deeply understanding the internal motivations that allowed them to turn the key and design products, modify their existing product to really speak to the audience, do the copy, and speak to that deep need more than the people themselves could articulate.
I think that's one of the keys. Is a lot of the time people can't articulate it, and this is where surveys and stuff can sometimes go wrong. In a survey, or where you're asking somebody for feedback, they're often telling you either what you want to hear, or it's kind of a herd mentality. They're going to talk to you as if they're a maximizer, as if they're making the objectively right choices. But most people, when they buy stuff, don't make the objectively right choice. They make the easy choice, or they make the obvious choice. I talk about this in the book, in the Obvious Choice book, a lot. Is why people actually buy versus why people say they buy, and the importance of understanding the difference. And it's not bad or good, but it's the reality. So the precision nutrition example is a good one. I don't know enough about the specifics of it to comment on it, but I can tell you what it's like with Quick Coach. The software platforms that people use in the health and fitness industry to train their clients, the people who build these platforms think, oh, I'm going to help people automate their services more. I'm going to help people save more time. I'm going to help people make more money. Whereas the reality of it is the folks who are hiring this software to do the job that they're hiring the software for is that they often don't feel like they appear professional in the eyes of their clients. Whether they do or not is a different conversation. But they don't feel like they are putting themselves across in a professional manner. And so the job of the software is actually to provide them with that feeling of professionalism so that they can confidently show up towards their clients. It is nothing to do with more automation, more power, being able to scale your services. It has very little to do with that with the majority of people who use it.
I love that you shared that because, first of all, for the audience, that little tiny sentence that John just shared took a phenomenal amount of work. It takes a phenomenal
$500,000 in a year and a half of research.
Exactly. I just want to make it clear.
Don't twist the knife, buddy. Don't twist the knife.
Well, I'm just making it clear that it sounds so simple when you say it. But it is a tremendous amount of time and energy, and a lot of the time, you got the nail on the head when it's something that clear and simple and obvious. Right. If it was super complicated, I would be. It would be harder to believe. It's usually something deeply fundamental.
Deeply fundamental, and it's an unobvious truth. Once articulated, becomes so obvious that you can't think about anything else. That's the way I kind of look at it. So we talked about customer journey mapping. Is there anything you want to add to that, or you want to go straight to design?
I think design thinking probably is where people I'm not exactly sure the audience here, but I'm assuming design thinking is probably where they're going to be getting the best bang for their buck.
Yeah. So talk to me about that.
So design thinking is I think it originated from the guys at IDEO, the design company. And basically, there were probably a couple of really, good thinkers at the process. And all they did is follow a simple, the process we were talking about. Understand what you're really looking to go for. Understand what needs to happen for that to happen. And just be methodical and diligent about following the steps. So this can be applied to really anything you want to design, whether it be a workspace or a company or a product or a book. You can apply it to anything. And let's say you're applying it to personal training sessions. You literally ask the question, what are we looking to accomplish? What are we looking to create here? And you work backwards.
I want to hear how you applied this. So you're not involved with the company anymore. You sold off your stake in it, but you co-created the 5-Minute Journal. It sold close to 2 million copies at this point. It inarguably spurred on, call it the gratitude movement, not in the entrepreneur world. Like you started it. And so
you were there. You were there when it started.
I was there. I was at the first event where you
Yeah.
promoted the thing, and I was like, "Who's this guy, man?" Um, but now I'm like, "Man, this guy's impressive." But at the point, I was like, "Who's this guy? What is this gratitude thing, man?" Uh, but how did you apply this idea of design thinking into this beautiful product that started a revolution that's impacted millions of people and also that's made many, many, many millions of dollars and sold close to 2 million units? How did you apply this design thinking to kind of work backwards to make a product that really stands out, so simple, so beautiful, so eloquent in what it is?
It's a great question. So if I look back, well, first of all, when it came to start the starting of the business, the idea was very simple. I was working at the time to help people change habits on a results
Mm-hmm.
based approach, and I was working an hourly gig. And
Okay.
very simply, I wanted to take my time and start to move from getting paid hourly to getting paid for the value that I wanted that was creating. And so it was clear that I wanted to do something. And the world I've always loved and the world that I continue to love is the world of helping people change habits and
Okay.
improve in some fundamental way. And and so that was always interesting to me. Um, and then I was going on long walks with my friend Alex, who you also know,
Mm-hmm.
who's the co-founder on the business and the project.
Yep.
And so we were talking, and we were talking about gratitude itself, and how important it was, and the value. And when I was 17, oh, this is also something I may have shared this with you. When I was 17, I came to Canada uh, alone, never been to a foreign country before, and I was very motivated to do something with my life because I wanted to stay in the country. And someone gave me the suggestion that if you write down the things that you're working towards and the actions that are moving you towards your goals every night before you go to bed, you're more likely to achieve them.
Okay.
And I thought that was a really cool suggestion. I'll try it for a year. And I did. And it worked. And so every night I had my own kind of 20-minute journal that I did for years and years. And one day when I was taking this walk with Alex, he asked me about the process. I told him, and we talked about gratitude and how it's impacted our lives. And I was
Right.
seeing it with the clients in the clinic, how, because I used to bring a bunch of interventions, and I used to see which worked, what worked, what didn't.
Yeah. You were
And the
actively
writing,
doing the thing.
yes,
Like I don't want to gloss over that. Like you were doing the thing and getting real world feedback
mm-hmm.
every single day into
Yeah.
what aspects of it worked, didn't work, what got a response, what didn't.
And so what was interesting is because as someone who was motivated to stimulate this change, I used to look stuff up. I used to find out, okay, what works, what doesn't, what do we know from the research. And so there was this crazy thing called gratitude, and
Yeah.
it will blow your mind. Like the research, this is what it states. If you write down 3 things you were thankful
Yeah.
for about a week or 2 weeks, you will feel and you will feel the effects weeks in advance.
And this was all in the research
It was
already.
all in research.
Yeah.
It's all in research. And it just seemed so crazy. But there was enough research to show you this is legit. And there was enough of experience I was having of the clients to
Right.
show this is legit. And so we decided, okay, we want to do this. And um, so I looked it up, and there was nothing like this out there.
Mm.
And so,
Which seems crazy now.
which seems crazy now. It was crazy
How
to
many
me back
people?
then.
How many people have copied you?
Oh yeah, how long of a time do you have?
A few. Yeah.
A lot. So, and some are crafty enough to get away with it. Some people are, it is what it is. So then we realized, okay, like how do we do this to simplify
Mm.
this 20-minute practice? Because not everyone's going to do a 20-minute practice, and how do we whittle it down?
That was one of the keys. Is
Yeah.
how do you that like that's what I love about this design thinking philosophy. And what you're talking about is, okay, let's work backwards. We know this is the outcome, right? Here's the stopping points for eliciting this change on a mass scale. We don't have the buy-in for people to do this. I spoke to our mutual friend Don Tapani, is involved in the summit too, and
Mm-hmm.
he talks about the same thing, where you can't just tell somebody, or people are like, oh, I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to do it 30 minutes a day every day from now on. It's like, no, 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 no. That's not how it works, man. Like you can't just go from 0 to 100 like that. And so this problem that you solved here, or that you're working to solve, is working backwards. What are the barriers?
Mm-hmm. And so that was a big thing about that was the name. Was the name, because we had a lot of names going on. We were once I wrote it down, it was clear.
Yeah.
It was just snappy. It was clear. It took away the excuses, because that's what it does. It takes away the excuse of like, I don't have
five
time to
minute
journal.
5 minute journal.
Journal.
What were some of the other names? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they were quite terrible, but like Better Self Journal. No, wait, that was a competitor. That can't be.
There is a Better Self journal.
There is a Better Self Journal.
Yeah,
Short gratitude journal, something like that. I can't even remember.
yeah,
But if I look up, because I save all my journals, so if I look it up
right.
enough, I'll probably find it.
But that's how like you knew you nailed it. Like 5 minute. Like, okay.
Well, the cool
I
thing
still
about
think you should
name,
have called the productivity planner 5 minute.
I know. We
Productivity
talked
Planner.
about it. We talked about
I'm gonna hold that one over your head
it.
for the
You
rest of your
can,
life.
you can.
I remember when you were telling me about that. I was like, why is this not 5 minute productivity? What? I don't get it.
We talked about it. Where was that? There's something about a name, and this is universally applicable, by the way. A good name sticks,
Yeah.
right? It sticks. It doesn't leave you.
Right.
And so you just have to pay attention to which names are sticky and which ones aren't. A good name sticks, and when it does, it feels beautiful. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the job is done, and the trick is to let go and just to let the name do the job.
Well, it's kind of it works in the theme. I mean, once you have 5 minute journal, you kind of know what you're doing. Like everything follows the decisions that you make, and this is design thinking. Is, to me, it's kind of works backwards and then forwards, doesn't it?
Yep.
Right? You work backwards from the main problem, which is, or the main solution is, like, we know how effective gratitude is. We know
Mm-hmm.
how important it is. Okay, what's the main stopping point? Well, this has got to kind of either fit in somebody's existing patterns or be very easy and quick to start, and obvious how easy and quick this is to start.
And something else
And
that was
we know
important.
this from BJ Fogg's work on
Yeah.
habits. Like it's nothing new. This is nothing new to me.
And this is still,
Popularized by James Clear, of course, where most people are more familiar with it.
I really like the word obvious, the obvious choice. And a big part of what we wanted to do is we wanted to make the product itself seamless. Like, we wanted to make it seamless. And I think it's a beautiful experience when you make something seamless. It flows like water. It flows beautifully. And when there's hitches, you pay attention to your own, because we were kind of our own audience in a certain sense. Because so as we flow through it, we're like, where are the kinks in the flow? And so we were in a sense doing customer journey mapping on ourselves. It's easier when you're the client you're making it for, you're the customer you're making it for, because you understand what you want, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also like, this is fairly popular at this point, but scratch your own itch at the time was not a popular phrase.
Yeah, it's
It is
funny
now.
when I talk about that with people. I mean, what are we talking about here? 2012,
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny when I talk about that era of, call it online marketing, call it information marketing, whatever you want to call it, but it was the same in a lot of ways as it is now. I don't think anything that's really important fundamentally has changed. You got to do good work. You got to understand your audience. You got to show up consistently. You got to not get distracted. I don't think the actual tool doesn't much matter. And you're always going to be pulled towards new tools and algorithmic changes that you think are important and aren't that important. Those types of things haven't changed. But what has changed is that a lot of things that were not, call it obvious, or a lot of things that are just kind of accepted now to be true
Mm-hmm.
weren't generally accepted. Like when I started selling information online, I had the first checks that I started making sent to my parents' house because they didn't believe me that I was making money.
No.
Like it was just like, what do you mean you work on the internet and don't sell advertising? Like, like that was just like it wasn't that. I mean, you know, you have Indian parents, I have Jewish parents. There's a lot of crossovers
Oh, for
between the
sure.
two. Wasn't like they just like didn't accept me if I wasn't a doctor. But I know a lot of doctors, of course. But it was more they just didn't understand. Whereas now, acceptance amongst ethnic parents notwithstanding, I think I think they at least understand. The majority of people understand that there are opportunities out there that may not have been generally accepted to exist before. And like that's changed a
Yeah,
lot,
in a big way.
and it's so cool.
In a big way. I think what's different now, as what's harder, frankly, is the psychological game because
How so?
I think there's just so much coming at you that it becomes
Yeah,
harder to. Well, we have the AI. Now we have the the apps have become a lot more sticky in our brains, um,
yeah.
and not to mention anything of apps on like young kids' brains, for example. That's just a whole landmine. Um, but what happens is attention is essentially being pulled in so many ways, and it's profitable. So for business owners, for entrepreneurs, for creators, artists, the job of keeping their head straight and making good decisions is at a real premium.
I talk about this a lot in the book.
Sweet. I'm looking forward to this.
It's so good, man. Did I tell you that I actually signed with the publishing company? I don't think I told you that.
No,
But
dude, congrats.
yeah, so I signed with HarperCollins
Awesome.
readership. For That was just last week. But I talk about this in the book, and I think it's lesson 2 where I talk about social media, and like only one of the lessons out of the 13 is about social media, which I mean tells you enough of
Mm-hmm.
where I think it is an importance. It's like, hey, it's there. It's like it's not that it's not important, but like you don't have to use it, and if you do use it, you should understand why you're using it and be careful within that. But to me, it's a pure misalignment problem. Your goals often in using a social media platform are very much misaligned with the goals of the platform
Mm-hmm.
itself. And neither goal is better or worse. They're just different, right? Like your goal is probably not to become famous on the internet. Like your goal in using Instagram is not to become a famous Instagrammer,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's to leverage Instagram to do something else outside of Instagram, build a better business, whatever, right? Well, Instagram's goal is for you to become a famous Instagrammer. All of the insights, all of the metrics, all of the algorithmic changes, all of the addictive design elements that they build into it has their goals in mind,
Mm-hmm.
not your goal. And neither goal, I want to be clear, I think neither goal is better nor worse, but they are certainly misaligned. And the issue comes in when you fall prey to what's called Goodhart's law, which is when the measure becomes the goal, it ceases to become a good measure.
Mm-hmm. That's a
The
beautiful one.
measure, it's beautiful, right? It's eloquent
Yeah.
because getting more followers, getting more engagement may be somewhat tangentially related to your goal, but it's not for sure related to your goal. It's related to their goal. And so then it becomes a problem of how can you use the thing or confidently not use the thing in order to better achieve in the straightest path possible your desired outcome.
I think what you're talking about is there's a side thing here that's probably relevant to share, which is game theory, which is just a fancy way of
Okay.
saying understanding yourselves and your intentions, and understand the other party and their intentions, so
Right.
you can navigate as effectively as you can. Because very, very, as you mentioned, your goals are not aligned to the platform's goals,
And it's
and
not a bad thing.
that's not a bad
It's
thing at all.
nobody's evil.
Exactly.
Like there are for-profit private organizations. I
Exactly.
mean, maybe a publicly traded, but like there are for-profit organization. They're trying to make money, like any business is trying to make money. Now they've somehow pulled off the greatest magic trick in the history of the world, which is getting millions of people to work for free for them every single day and not getting human rights activist groups up in arms about it. But that's a whole other conversation. But I don't think anybody's evil.
Oh no. Oh no. I think they're just maximizing their self-interest to a significant
Mm-hmm.
degree. And I think this is why the self-awareness key becomes such a critical component, because you got to understand what you really want, which is different from what you think you want, by the way. So I'll just double click on that quickly, which
Yeah.
is, so let's say I asked the question, what's like, who represents success for you? Okay. I'm just asking you, don't
Yeah.
answer. Don't. You,
Which is a very good question to ask, by the way.
yeah,
A
absolutely.
very good question
It's
to
an
ask.
awesome question. And then to anybody listening, just think of the person that you're thinking, the first person that comes to mind. Very likely, if you haven't thought about this question before, that first answer that comes to mind is the surface layer answer. It's
Okay.
not the true deep answer that is going to pull you. It's going to be the answer that either peers or social media or people that you respect have mentioned that show
Yeah.
up on that top layer. It is
Well, you just
your
see them more often. It's just a
exactly
pure cognitive ease thing. You just
exactly.
see their
It's
stupid
like
face
the
more often because they're
impressions,
in the same filter bubble as you.
right? And so it takes time to go, wait, that doesn't really, because if I were to, you have to ask yourself, you introspect, right? If I change
Mm-hmm.
positions with them, would I enjoy that life? Would I truly enjoy that life? After, not in
Yeah.
the first day, maybe you have the fame and the fortune and you're blowing money. Fine. 6 months later, are you still truly enjoying the day to day of what that life is? And for most, the answer is no. And so you ask, whose day to day do I really want to emulate, and do I really want to be like? What's that for me? That success to me is, whose day to day do you want to switch with? And so that takes time. That takes energy to understand. And so once you have that, then you know what you're truly working towards. But if you don't know yourself, that self-awareness isn't there, you're starting to do things in your mind unconsciously, optimizing for something you don't even really want.
Right.
So it's understanding yourself, what you truly want, understanding how, let's say, the other party, in this case, the social media platform, wants, how they're playing, how their algorithm is geared towards pulling on your limbic strings. So you are pulled to the app more for fame reasons, for validation reasons. These are deeply embedded in our brainstem. And so recognizing that and navigating that well is a skilled, it's a skilled game.
And it's so important to keep checking yourself before you wreck yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just to continually go back to that. This guy, this gal has this fame, perceived fame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Accolade, whatever, that I feel like I deserve or I want or I desire. Well, you can't just have that one thing of theirs. You have to be willing to trade everything you have for everything they have. You have to be willing to trade
The whole
everything
thing.
you do for everything that they do. And most often, what you will find is you're not willing to trade places with them. There are a lot of people out
Now, you know
there
what's,
who I admire. I absolutely admire, but I don't, and I might even desire parts of what they have, but I do not desire what they've had to do to get it. And I think
well,
that's
there's
okay.
a, my phone is now rested on a book that I'm going to quote. This is
Your phone is now rested on one of my books that I pulled off of the shelf to put into my kitchen on the kitchen table where you're sitting right now.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
Naval's quote, actually.
Yep.
And I love it. He states it so eloquently. If you really want to be famous, try getting rich first.
Yeah.
Right? I think if you really want to be rich and famous, try getting rich first.
That was
Because
a Jim
it
Carrey thing. That's a Jim Carrey quote.
is it? It's
Originally, I
cool.
think.
Great.
Yeah, I
Well,
think that was
whoever,
originally a
it's
Jim
one of the
Carrey
two.
quote. He's like, if you want to get, if I'm sure Naval said it too quite eloquently. He has a way with words for sure. But yeah, I think that was originally like Jim Carrey thing. He's like, try just getting rich and see if that doesn't satisfy all of your
No.
needs. Well, it's like,
You know,
what did I see the other day? It was a picture of, and the note above it, right, the caption of it, whatever it was, like, word got out that Taylor Swift was eating at this restaurant. This is 5 minutes later, and it was just like just down the street, just packed with people. I'm like, yo, that life sucks. I sat down with Mark Manson and spoke to him about his experiences with Will Smith. You know, he wrote Will Smith's book, right? And he was telling me about Will's life, and it's just like slap to the face notwithstanding. I mean, it's hard not to admire what Will has achieved, but oh my god, man! Like, you can't go anywhere or do
no,
anything ever anywhere in the world.
no.
That's crazy.
It's a different trade-off. One that I'm happy not to have.
Yeah.
No.
I wanna end with because I think this is just so cool what you were doing when you decided you wanted to pick up poker and learn the game of poker, basically from nothing, basically from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it will sum up a lot of what we're talking about here, which is design thinking, which is first principles, which is figuring out how to tackle something perhaps new or something that you're not good at and learn quickly. And also, if you decide to do something, fucking do it. Don't dick around. And don't decide to do too many things. Decide carefully and then really dive into it. So, why poker? And what did you do to begin to learn the game of poker?
Well, so one is I have a good friend who is a very skilled player, and a skilled coach in the field,
I
and
know
that
him
was
well. He
definitely
dated my cousin for a long time.
small world. Small world.
It's a weird small world.
And so the way we became friends is because we were just like connoisseurs of good thinking, and we developed our good thinking into very different fields.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just like surprised and amazed at this game's ability to sharpen thinking and sharpen decision making, while understanding the other party. So this has basically all the elements that we were talking about: game theory, understanding the opponent and understanding their ranges, making clear decisions that are based on fact and not fiction, understanding imperfect information and using it. You know, poker is a very human game. And at the time, the focus was finance for me. I was interested in making, understanding my relationship to money and capital allocation, but also decision making as it related to capital. And poker, you're essentially betting, betting for your life, essentially. And
Yep. You're
and
betting
so
with partially complete information, right? Like, that's why poker,
exactly.
Texas Hold'em poker, is such a fascinating, beautiful, eloquent game, and such a good model for clear thinking and learning how to think, is because, like the real world, there is some information that is completely unknown, that there's no way that you can reasonably expect to know it. But there's also some information that is 100% known by every character playing. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's other information that's only known by you. And then there's assessments of body language and psychology, which is, if
Mm-hmm.
you think about it, basically representative of everything we do in the real world.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
fascinating.
It maps onto reality really, really well. And um, and so what I did was I started playing online. You probably saw me play a few hands.
Yep.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think I was playing 1 cent, 2 cent at the time. Um, it's pretty small stakes overall, but what it does, it gives you a good history of the hands you played, and then
Yep.
I would just send it to my coach, and he would break each hand down based on the flow of information and what made sense and what didn't. And what was beautiful about that is I could learn where my thinking was kinked, and I could kind of like
Okay.
unkink it. And and then there's always fun stuff you can do, like go. In COVID, it wasn't as easy, but now there's things have opened up again. Playing tournaments and such. There's a Toronto poker. There's a Toronto poker club for entrepreneurs. By the way, if you're interested, you should totally go. And there's places you can do that. But I think even understanding basic concepts like pot odds and how they apply to life, because I can take the learnings I have from poker, let's say a session of poker, and say, okay, what is this really cool concept called pot odds? How do I apply that into the rest of my life? And that's just a journal session.
Okay.
And so
Right.
pot odds is essentially asymmetric upside situations where, let's say, you're betting
Yes.
$10 to win 50, for example, where I would take that bet if it's a positive expected value any day, because assuming you have your sufficient bankroll, even if I take 5 bets like that, if in the long run I'm coming out on top, a lot of people aren't going to be willing to take that because they're afraid of losing money, and the fear prevents them from taking that bet, which is the main reason why those spots are very juicy for someone like myself, because I'll take that bet every time. See, in finance, when an industry or a market is crowded, your spreads start to thin
Mm-hmm.
because it's not as juicy anymore. It's not as new or different anymore. And so it's the same with interesting spots that are uniquely suited to your natural style of playing the game or playing life or whatever. And so,
What I also love about poker is that it teaches you how to fail and fail
yeah,
better, and the importance of consistently making good decisions with asymmetric upside in knowing that often it is not going to work out.
all the,
But if you keep playing long enough, the odds are going to work in your favor. And that's also a big part of the book.
yeah, it's like
but consistently making good decisions and how important that is. And even if you make a great decision that has a 70% upside, which is like remarkable. Like the best investors in the world are 60 to 65% right.
yeah,
So like but you're still going to
a
lose
lot.
3 out of 10 times, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And that's why, oh, I just did this one thing and it worked. It's like, that's bullshit. There's so much luck involved in
Yeah.
that you're much better off. That's why I love what you were doing with poker, is that you learning it was a way for you to learn about making better
Mm-hmm.
decisions.
Yeah.
And part of that is, hey, recognizing when the odds were skewed in your favor and understanding that it still might not work,
Mm-hmm. It,
and celebrating when you make a good decision, even if it doesn't work out.
yeah. Well, I think the one of the main deep lessons in that game, and this is not intuitive to a lot of people, is
Mm-hmm.
you can make a bad decision and still win,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And you can
Yep.
make a good decision and still lose. That's life.
Yep. Yep.
And And
I gotta
if
send you
you,
lesson 1.
all right,
I'll send you.
sounds great. But there are these beautiful, for anyone who plays poker already, if you can, like after your game, your home game, whatever, if you can spend about 10 minutes just studying the lessons you just learned, there's such value in that because this game is deep
Yeah.
and there's a lot to be learned for people interested in that.
I'm gonna let that be the last word
Sounds
because
great.
to me this is about poker, but it's not just about poker.
It's about life.
How much time do you spend analyzing the decisions you make and celebrating a good decision, even if it doesn't work out? UJ, dude, this is a pleasure. I'm going to see you in about 2.5 minutes as I walk into my house. So I'm not even going to say bye, but thanks for
See
doing
you
this.
soon.